What's up, y'all? You're now listening to the What Now podcast. I'm Dr. Spencer Dupre, owner of Empower Chiropractic.
And I am Dr. Zach Thompson, owner of Within Chiropractic. The purpose of this podcast is to document and share the experiences of two young business owners as we open our own brick and mortar chiropractic practices. Join along as we discuss all of our wins, our losses, insights, and the many, many lessons we learned.
As a disclaimer, none of this is ever intended to be medical, legal, or financial advice. Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome to the What Now podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Spencer Dupre, here with your other host, Dr. Zach Thompson, Within Chiropractic. What's up?
Merry Christmas, folks. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. We're currently recording December 22nd. This one will come out December 26th, the Monday after Christmas. Currently wearing my Santa hat, playing Christmas music in the office. Zach's looking festive as ever. Zach, tell people how you're being. Yeah,
I got a black coat on. We do have a small Christmas tree, very small, smallest Christmas tree probably in the state, in the practice. Yeah, I'm not very good at being festive.
So, it's good. You look like a lump of coal in the puffer jacket. Looks good. You're
so kind. Such a way with words. Thank you.
Yeah, it's the depiction. There's no shade on that. Anyway, what's up, guys? Thank you so much for listening. Been getting a lot of responses from people saying like, hey man, I've been tuning in every week and getting a ton of value from you guys' show. Thank you so much. Continue to share. Big shout out to Danielle for being on last week's podcast. She was awesome. She brought the heat. Definitely was the energy boost that I needed in my week for sure. And it kind of is even carrying over forward here. It really kind of lit up my passion and I had a lot of opportunities to share. Zach, what are some things that have carried over for you since last week?
Oh man. If you haven't had a chance to listen, I would definitely pause this and go listen, put it on 1.25 or 1.5 speed. So you can come back to this episode really quick, but I would say, the biggest takeaway, and I even mentioned it, in our discussion, was the amount of enthusiasm, passion, and convictions she had when talking about something like reach your hand and feed your dolphin with cotton candy skies. Like hearing her talk about that in such a fluid, passionate way, I was like, I got to get my ego out the door. Like there's just too much ego going on, wanting to do too much on the doctor side of things, that I was like, okay, let's go back to being a person. And so that was really the biggest takeaway for me, implementing that really in the day 1, day 2, day 3 process. With new patients is like, let's get back to connecting with them, and not being so concerned with the scans and with, communicating chiropractic, but let's bring it back down to a level for our practice members to understand. What about you?
Oh man, I think just being lit up, right? I think I was been so consumed like with a lot of the business and a lot of the marketing and a lot of the analytics and the systems and the rigidity that comes in with practice. Like I was forgetting like really kind of to have fun being here, and it's so much fun like to just be able to come into your own space and play your own music, do your own thing, say your own words. And I think a lot of that like really gets lost in all of the nitty gritty day-to-day grind stuff. We're in a community of like a lot of other business chiropractic, like people who own their own business. And we talk about that like a ton. And it's always a good refreshing thing to like kind of go back and just chat like, normal people. I feel like we forget so many times, like just to be normal, just to be ourselves, and not like quote in doctor mode. Right.
Yep. That's something Morgan and I, my girlfriend Morgan, talk about quite a bit, is like how nice it can be to sit down with someone who doesn't necessarily know the business of chiropractic or what chiropractic is all about, and just getting to connect with a person. I think if you've been in a big push and you are a chiropractic student, or even if you're a healthcare practitioner and you find yourself in that bubble, other than it's timely that we're talking about this right now, but like when you go home, don't try to like push chiropractic on your family or on your friends. Like just enjoy being around them, connecting with them, asking them how they're doing, what they're up to, instead of like, oh, I just learned all this. I want to go tell you all about it. I was there, and you could definitely do it, but I don't think your experience will be as enjoyable as you might think it will be. And I'm sure Spencer has had similar similar experiences going back to Louisiana. Wanted to share all the philosophy, and how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many times and so many conversations that like I kind of reflect back on, not just like back home with my family, but just in people in general, like, and where all you do is just like splurge this chiropractic knowledge on them. And it's like, man, I was such a dork. And I know I was annoying. Like I know I was annoying in that conversation. Like I now would not want to talk to me then. And but that's a phase that we all have to go to. You have to develop that zeal and that passion and that purpose and that fire. And then you just have to learn how to keep it in the fireplace, right? And you want to make sure all that smoke goes in one direction that's focused and not just up into the house, and everywhere and uncontrollable, because then you got people just being like, hey, when is this over? Yeah. Yeah. And that goes into like this conversation actually I had this morning with one of our homies. He was saying like, yeah, I'm going back home, and like my brother's wife is like really skeptical about chiropractic for her and their new baby. And so he's like, how do I get them to let me adjust them? And it's like, dude, it's like, they don't let you adjust them. Like, you get the opportunity to serve them. And the biggest thing is saying like, yeah, moms are very reluctant to hand over kids to someone that they don't trust. And it's, I mean, I had a mom come in here, ask me a bunch of questions and be like, well, I was still going to choose this anyway. I just wanted to see what you would say and if you were going to be honest. That's crazy. Like, to sit across from someone and just be like, I just tested you to see if you were going to be transparent with me about what your actual motives are, and for her to follow up and say like, yeah, we've just been like hurt by a lot of different providers, and and so we're just very wary of who we trust with our care, but we need it and it's important. It's like, whoa,
that's awesome.
Yeah. And so it's like, man, people don't care about what you think is important. They care if you think that they are important. Mm-hmm. And, just
that's been a huge unlearning process for me too, is, going through day one procedures. We mentioned it quite a few times, but like taking people through a scan. I think, I'm only 3 months into utilizing the CLA scans, but I think I was very, attached to the scans, where it was like, whatever the scans showed, that was going to be my suggestions, without actually sitting down and kind of digesting who was I sitting across from. And really the biggest thing is like, what is their goal? The scans, the scans really show how big of an improvement someone can make throughout, lifetime care or, wellness care. It also shows like where they're at and what they need frequency wise. But really listening to what their goal is has been so big. And it's been in that, tying that back into what we were just talking about, like putting myself aside and listening to what they not necessarily even need, but what they want, right? Like if someone's coming in for, results for their low back pain, and their scans are through the roof, and they, mention all these other chronic things, but they're really like, yeah, I just want to, get back in the gym. I'm not going to recommend this, 36 visit care plan, because they're going to be like, well, I feel like this can be taken care of in 6 to 8 visits. And so just being a lot more insightful into what they are expressing has been a huge thing. And I've noticed that's been a huge carryover into not even just like better conversions, but more excited practice members.
So here's a question for you. Have you added the thermal, or are you still just using EMG and HRV?
Still using just HRV and CMG. So the plan is to sit down over this Christmas break and see if I think thermal is the need.
Yeah. I've had a lot of really good, back like onto the scans. Like a lot of people come in with like really poor scans, and not really poor scans, but like scans that have a lot of room for improvement, right? That's what I'm talking about. Straying from the normal, showing a lot of like chronicity, right? And that's why I ask about thermal, because that's where like thermal really, at least in my interpretation, like shows like how long this has been. So it show, but I think that goes into kind of what we were talking about. What we were going to talk about today is in like preparedness, right? And preparing for things in their like in the finite details, but without like being too rigid in them, right? And like I feel like we all like come into practice thinking like, dude, I'm ready to rock because I can adjust and I know chiropractic, or even if I don't know chiropractic, like I can adjust. Maybe I like to okay, I can open a practice because I like to adjust. Boom. And then you're like, whoa, here it is, businessness, right? Like we're coming up like on our end of the year for our own practices. And so now it's like, boom, taxes. Whoa. Like, how do I prepare for tax? That's something I like was not even ready for, you know? And so now I'm getting ready for that. So talk about some things that you have been preparing for in the practice that you didn't anticipate and now that you're taking into consideration.
Oh man. I mean, I think taxes are a big one. Definitely something I was never like in school thinking, you know, what do I really need to start preparing for is taxes. I think the biggest thing I'm preparing for, you know, is having brought on Joshua, the front desk patient care advocate, is preparing to train and guide him to the level that I think is capable of, and really preparing myself mentally for, you know, I don't want to say like mess ups, but more or less like, okay, this is where we could have done things differently, and really preparing myself to have those conversations because I'm someone that in the past has shied away from that. And so, you know, really addressing the concern as soon as it happens, instead of sitting on it for, you know, a week and then be like, well, last week, you know, you did this. It's like, no, let's address it now while it's fresh. And so really preparing myself mentally every day to not necessarily have those conversations. I'm not like preparing for issues to arise, but more or less just preparing myself to be a boss, I guess, in you know, in those type of ways.
Yeah, like having the awareness that there's the possibility for those things, right? Like, yeah, in a way, like I let the scans like kind of do all of like we talk about the goals, and then I let scans like tell me like, okay, this is what the frequency and the duration of your care is, and I mean, yeah, I present pretty long care plans like to people, but they're coming in for a lot of other different reasons other than like low back pain. You know, it's like ear infections, chronic ear infections, like monthly, like long standing things, or like that kind of stuff. And so like, but having the flexibility, like of people being like, hey, like, look, like, I would love to do this. And like, but I just don't know if I can commit to the full thing. Right. And being able to be like, okay, well, like where is like a middle ground where we can meet, as into like, let me do right by you in the amount of care that you get. And then like, let's see like where we go. Right. And so like just being flexible, like through the entire, process. Right. Because, I feel like if we have these things, it's like, nah, it's like, it's this way or bust, right? Then like we're selling ourselves short of opportunities that like present themselves, if that makes sense, right? Like, so, you know, turning away somebody because they're like, yeah, I can't commit to 6 months of care. Yeah. But also at the same time saying like, hey, like, look, like you do need 6 months of like, you need these visits.
Yeah.
You know, same thing with like our bank, you know, finances and stuff. It's like, hey, like I can't pay this much on ad spend. It's like, but like they're necessary. So it's like, where do we meet in this middle ground?
Yeah. Right. And I think too, like to that point, it's not like I'll kind of go back to what I said. I'm not like suggesting 6 to 8 visits by any means. You know, it's still 24, 28, 36 visits. And it's just more or less sitting down and getting to know them throughout the process, and not just presenting in that report the scans itself. We're always tying it back into their goals, and allowing the scans to express how we're going to get there. As before, I was just very much like, here's the scans. This is, you know, what we know with chiropractic, and to make these scans look better, this is what's going to be required. So it was really just learning how to supplement the scans instead of supplementing chiropractic and their goals into their scans, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I feel like we try to forecast like as much as we can, like goals, you know, goal setting, etc. Like this is how I'm going to do it, and I'm sure like I'm sure like in school, like I remember like when I was in school, I'd be like, no, this is what I'm going to do right here. And then like, man, like you just pivot so hard, so hard. So like, what do you feel like has been the biggest pivot, or like what have been some of the pivotal points that you feel like have happened in your journey from when you started school till now?
From the start of school, the biggest pivot was I was very much sports chiropractor, Zach. That's how I got into chiropractic. I was going to take care of professional golfers and professional athletes. Not that I would be opposed to taking care of them now, but I wasn't. I just found the adjustment and the philosophy of chiropractic so amazing, and it led me into this wellness state and really unlocking and removing the interference of the nervous system to express in the best way it can. And to me, that wasn't going to happen in sports chiropractic. Doing a 40-minute massage or all the fancy doodad machines just wasn't going to cut it. So that was the biggest pivot early on. And then obviously, I don't know about obviously, but the biggest pivot since graduating was the pivot to not open with a franchise. And so really sitting down with myself, I thought that's what I wanted. I thought that's what I needed to do. It was with a group I was in alignment with, and so that's what I thought I needed to do. And then, so that's when I sat down and had time to think. The biggest pivot was to say no and go my own way. And
Yeah,
it was the hardest pivot I think I've made in my entire life. Still one that I think about a lot. So it was a tough pivot, but yeah, that was the biggest pivot.
yeah. I think for me, it was like I remember in try one in the philosophy class, it was saying like when we were learning about honestly, I took that philosophy class for granted so bad. So Dr. Russell, if you're listening, I apologize for playing Pokemon in your class, but dude, that class was gold whenever I think about all the moments that I was too ignorant to understand at that point. But that man and that class like planted a lot of seeds that were being sown that I didn't even see under, behind the scenes. I remember like one time we talk about the concept of like mechanism, right? So like things are mechanical and moving in only parts and vitalism. And then it was just like, the question was just like on a piece of paper to turn in for your attendance at class, like write down if you are a mechanist or a vitalist and why, or like your reasoning why you feel like you fall in that. And I said like, I'm a mechanist and like vitalism seems dumb and sacrilegious. And like, that was it. And like, I was like, man, and now it's like, whoa, like I was so ignorant into that. And like, that could not be farther from the truth. And so that was like a big awareness pivot. I feel like I gained a ton of just appreciation for life itself. Like, dude, I never thought I would like have a bunch of plants, and now it's like my favorite part of practice because like I can like of my room and just like sitting here and just like watching these plants grow. Like it's like, wow, like that is so amazing. Like I feel like my appreciation for life just like was deepened throughout school, and that was a big pivot for me where I was just kind of like, it's whatever, this is a job, I'm just keep moving. That and then like staying in Texas, I feel like was a big pivot for me. I thought forever that I was going to go back to Louisiana, but man, all the doors just kept opening up in this direction, and therefore my doors opened up in this direction. And
I mean, even like for you opening in Texas, like that was, I think back to our conversations that we were having, back in March and April of this year of 2022, and you being like, yeah, I'm going to go back to Louisiana. I was like, I don't know, but
yeah,
I don't know if he's going to go back to Louisiana, but he says he is, so we'll see. And he did,
yeah,
and I'm super grateful for it. But
yeah, okay. Here's a question that just dropped in for me.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been friends for like a really long time, and we've like basically walked through the entire process up until today together, in a sense. Mm-hmm. Maybe not as close as some, like like you and Alex and Quan, and like me and Adam are like a lot closer than we were, but we've known each other for quite some time. So like, what are some changes that you have noticed in me since we have first met?
Oh man, that's a great question. For those that don't know, I don't even know if you knew this, but like when I first met you, I wasn't like your biggest fan, and I don't think you were my biggest fan, so that doesn't really matter. But
Maybe.
I just saw this. I don't know if like cocky is the right word, but this really confident kid. Because I mean, you were a kid, we were both kids.
Yeah, I was 21.
Coming into KTC. You were there some days, you weren't there some days, and it was just like, I don't know what's up with this guy. I didn't give you enough time. I didn't like have enough time to get to know you really until I think we were both a year and a half into school.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I actually sat down with you and got to learn you, I got to see this really fun, loving guy. And who knows, maybe that's because you started to see the vitalistic side of life. I know for me that definitely changed. I was a very grumpy Zach before I found vitalistic chiropractic. But I think the biggest thing I've seen you change, especially in this last 6-7 months, is your ability to kind of what we were talking about in the beginning is to pivot. You're very headstrong. I think we referenced you as a bulldog for a long time. It was just like, this guy's just going to put his head down. He's going to do what he thinks is right all the time until he realizes too late that it's the wrong thing. And now I think you're at a point where you're very open. You're open to coaching. You're open to feedback. And that's, I think, why you're seeing the success you're seeing now is because you're finally willing to not only ask for feedback, but accept it. Would be the biggest change I've seen.
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah, even just whenever I like thought of this question, I was like, man, wow, I would never have asked this question to anyone. Like, hey, what do you think of me? Because I knew what I thought of myself at that point, and those were not good things. And so I was really afraid to hear that somebody else would say those things that I was thinking of myself and validate it. Right.
It's literally something I heard recently on a podcast, and I'm sorry that I don't know it. I cannot give credit, but I've learned I listen to too many podcasts. But someone literally, I think it might have been Andy Frisella, but it was, those that aren't willing to accept feedback or criticism, it's not necessarily because they think they know it all, but it's a strong sense of insecurity in themselves. So I know when I think back on myself, when I wasn't willing to accept feedback, or even now when I hear feedback and it cuts into an insecurity of mine, like it cuts deep and I'm not willing to listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that was a big thing. I was like way too quick to like shut off other people's opinions or like what they were telling me. And I was like, nah, like if it didn't automatically align with what I was already thinking and validate like where I thought I was going, I was just like, nah, dude, this is not it. Oh, they're dumb. Like, oh, they're whatever. And now I feel like I'm a lot more open. So cool. Thanks. Appreciate that.
I'll throw the question back your way. Yeah.
Okay. This is the first thing that comes to mind is honestly, I just feel like you love yourself a lot more than you did before. It's like all hard for all of us to accept ourselves, but I feel like you were very like like disconnected with yourself and like unhappy like with yourself, and then that would lead to you being like unhappy with others and just kind of projecting that back onto other people as like, oh well, like well, I don't know, grumpy Zach, and now like, dude, I feel like you're just like very much more content like with yourself and like where you're at, and you have an appreciation like for yourself that is deeper than what it is. And I feel like that a really big pivot point for you was accepting Christ and getting baptized. I feel like that was like a huge chapter close for you. It was like I feel like if we're like referencing one of the only books that I read, John Eldridge's book, when we talk about like Fathered by God, like in the different stages, there's like the cowboy and the warrior stage. And I felt like, like I was very much in that warrior stage, like for a long time, like fighting and like resisting and feeling like everyone is against me. And then I felt like, maybe the same, but I feel like now you've moved more into this like exploration self-discovery phase, which has been really good. It's been really cool to see.
Thanks, man. And I'll kind of expand on that too, and because I've definitely noticed that the last several months. I think it stems from two things that are the same in and of itself. It was really hard for me to always accept. I guess love would be the right word, but really like I always seeked external validation because I never thought I was enough. So I was always doing things that I thought would validate myself to be one of the best or do this and that. And it wasn't really until I accepted Christ as our Lord and Savior, as well as one to go to in quiet time and just release all anxiety and stress, and really have those intimate conversations, that I began to love myself. And it's profound, just really that relation with God, what it can do for you, because it is within you. Wink. But also, just knowing that there is a higher power with a name, who came to this world to die for your sins, and that you're imperfect, but he knows how imperfect you are. He was willing to send his only son to die for your imperfections, and really coming to grips with that through conversations with you, Spence, conversations with Colton, really just bolstered my self-confidence in a whole new direction.
Yeah, dude, we've had good conversations, and I also feel the same way. Like I feel like you were talking about in the past 6-7 months, really dude, being like, wow, I actually know nothing. Like for the longest time, I felt like I knew so much, and I felt like nah, I got it, I'll figure it out. And then really when you embark on the endeavor of creating something so small, like a small business, right? Mm-hmm. Then it really feels like the world is so massive. And then really being intentional and putting the word and scripture first, and being the fuel and the driver for my business, and not really just my business, but my personal development, myself, and in my relationships. It's been very empowering, wink wink, to see that there is a place with the answers, and that doesn't come from us, and that comes from asking for wisdom and asking for knowledge and growing, like I was talking about in that verse, growing in the knowledge and the depth of love of people and of Christ, and to let that be the fuel that propels us forward. That's been really big for me, and I feel so the theme really, but for both of us, is man, stop trying to generate it from self, right? And the way that we know self is by knowing God. And I think now that both of us are involved in Improver Group, that's something I'm really excited to is listen to Justin go deeper on that, the self-development into the business.
Yeah. And more on you receiving feedback. A year ago, if we had talked with Justin and, you were presented the Improver Group, I think, 100% you would say no, because you were like, I'm just going to do it my own. I don't need to improve. I'm good to go. And maybe you would have said yes, but it was, just kind of how I viewed you, where I was never going to pitch you anything that I didn't think was a slam dunk, which I think I presented you a lot of slam dunk opportunities, but there was just times where I was like, he's going to say no. He's very discerning, and I guess you're now less discerning.
Yeah, I feel some more insight into that. I don't think that I would have been oh, I don't need to improve. I think I would have been oh, Justin doesn't know how to improve me, so why would I ask him to? I think that's the view that I would have looked at. It's who is he to tell me how to improve myself? He doesn't even know me, right? Yeah. And that's because I wasn't letting people in to know me, right? And so it's the same thing. If we're keeping it on a topic with the business thing, right? If you don't let people come in and know you as the business owner, how are you going to ask them to commit to you, right? And how are you going to ask them to trust you, to care for them or their family, right? We have to be the ones to put the transparency and the vulnerability forward first,
right?
To where and have other people like receive feedback. I'd say like, hey, so what do you think about this? Like, right, explaining chiropractic, like, does this make sense? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think
is there any way?
Good. Something I think about a lot is chiropractic. You don't want to build necessarily a personality-based business, but at the same time, having a sense of your personality is huge, right? I think people are drawn to who you are, and the sooner you can be that all the time. We talked about this on another episode, but like, I don't think there should be a difference in the slightest of who you are in the office versus who you are in the community at home. Like, there should be no separation, and I think that's really hard to learn and kind of digest through, just because we want to be, the doctor and the business owner, and I don't mind telling people, like, look, I'm 26, like, you're 45. I can't believe you're trusting me, and at the same time, like, I have so much trust in myself and in chiropractic that I'm going to deliver results for you. But when I sit back and think about it, like, whoa, like, they're here, they're 45, they're 19 years older than me. They have kids, they have all these things going on, and now I'm sitting with them talking about their health history and what's going on. It's mind blowing to me, but really feeling myself and not allowing that moment to feel like, oh, now I got to try to act more professional. I don't have shoes on in my practice. Like, I'm not going to like go find my dress shoes and put them on, before that consultation, right? I'm not going to be fake.
Yeah. Right. I know. I think about that all the time. Like, I mean, I talk to parents and dude, like, I don't have kids. Right. I'm not married. Like, I don't have kids. Like, but what I do know is what I know. Right. And I lean on it and I tell them, like, look, like, hey, I'm not the one to tell you what to do with what is best for your family. Like, I can never put myself in the shoes of having to make a decision for your child. But what I can do is let you know how I can support you and your family. And if this is the best fit and you feel like this is the support you want for your family, then I, by all means, will forever show up for you guys. And I will give you everything that I have. And, yeah, it's crazy that people like are like trust us, right? But they do that through the being and going on to the personality based practice. I don't think, like, when you said that, what I think is like, no, I do have a personality based practice, but I'm not the personality. My practice and the values that it has creates the personality of our environment. Yes. And it's not an individual based practice. It's not a Spencer practice. It's a people who have the same values as me practice. It's the music I play has the same values as me. The decorations we have are the same values there. Right. It's the culture that we create. It's a culture-based practice.
Yeah, and you even mentioned too, like, you've taken yourself through your own systems. And I think that's a very important thing to do, is take yourself through your day one. Like use yourself as a fake patient and go through and see, like, oh wait, this doesn't feel. I don't feel great doing this. Then why the heck are you doing it, right? So trying to make it, as much as user friendly as possible.
Yeah, holding that container. Like, just yesterday I had a law firm call me and say, like, hey, would you be willing to take on a patient of ours? And I was like, well, yeah, of course, I would love to take on someone, And they said, okay. I said, well, like, is this for you? And they're like, no, we're calling about an initial visit. And I said, okay, great. Is this for you? And they said, no, it's actually for one of my clients. I'm a lawyer and they're in a car wreck in your area. And I was like, oh, well, actually, we don't take any MVA cases because our office is not set up for those kind of systems. And, we're a prenatal and pediatrics focused thing. And they say, oh, well, like, this is guaranteed money, right? This is a guaranteed, like, they literally said, this is a guaranteed, like, 15,000. Like, the case is already written up and, like, all you have to do is provide the care. And I was like, whoa, like, you know how easy it is to, like, say yes to that? But it's like, now, when I set the values for this, it's like, we don't take MVA cases and we don't do law cases here, because that's a lot of red tape that gets in the way of me helping kids. That's a lot of red tape that gets me out of the way of people who want to pay cash because they value that I can give them the recommendations. And so, like, to turn down like $15K, it's like, dude, it's like, no. And she's like, will you? They're like, okay, well, like, can we refer like moms and kids who are in car accidents to you? And I was like, if they're willing to pay cash and there's no third party insurance paying, then of course we'll see them. But like, we don't deal with this, and like, I will never take someone that will I will have to show in court for like that, because that's not what my brand is.
That's huge. And for those listening, that's from Spencer, getting to know himself at a very deep and personal level, and then bringing that into the practice and knowing where his values lie. Like he did say, like, value based practice. And that's something I've really been thinking on. Like, what are my values and how are they shining through? What are the practices values and how are they shining through? And if there was one takeaway from this episode, it would be to, know yourself. And if there's nothing wrong with taking on MBA cases. But if you're seeing kids and pregnant moms, probably is a weird, a weird dynamic going on. So great on you, Spence. That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, I feel complete. Do you feel complete?
I feel complete. This meeting is adjourned.
Dunzo. All right. Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. Thank you so much for listening to the What Now podcast. I'm Dr. Spencer Dupre, Empower Chiropractic, Argyle. My boy, Zach, Within Chiropractic, Colleyville, on the socials. Mm-hmm. We'll have to make a outro or something like that to where we don't have to awkwardly say these every time. But thank you so much for listening. Like we're saying, this podcast is literally us just being real to you guys, because that's what we value in other people. And so if you value this and you're a real person wanting to be a real doctor and help real people, share this with someone who you also feel is a real one. We'll be back next week.
Definitely share. We'll be back next week. And then let us know, what do you want us to talk about? What are some things that you're thinking through, or would have liked to know, or would like to know that school is not providing? And we'll sit down and discuss that. Some exciting guests planned for 2023, as well as some big things coming in 2023. So super duper excited to keep sharing and uncovering what's now.
Yep. Well, thank you so much, guys. We love you, and see you next week.